So we're having stir fry tonight, and whenever we were ordering up all the ingredients and stuff for it, we were going to go with the standard, like steak strips that you would cook off in the wok before you add the veg and stuff. And I remembered I had something in the freezer that I wanted to try out, and it's this. Now, you'll recognise this. We have done it on the channel before. That is a picanha. So we have roasted it, we've done it that kind of reverse sear method. We have cut it up and put it onto the rotisserie and done it that way, sort of the traditional way. But there's something else I wanted to try, and that is cutting this into steaks and cooking them as steaks rather than one large chunk of meat. I've never done it before, so I said, leave the steak strips off, I'll take care of the meat, you take care of the stir-fried veg and noodles. So my wife is preparing the stir-fry in the house. I am going to take care of these steaks. So we're going to slice them up into nice thick steaks, cook them off as you would any other steak. And I'm interested to see what they're like tenderness wise whenever they're cooked that way. Definitely so far reverse sear has been the most tender. The rotisserie method was incredible flavour. So I want to see what this does to it, because those two were definitely different. But let's get these prepared first. All right, so this is, of course, a picanha from the meat merchant in Moira. It's the only place I do get my picanhas. Now, this one's a little bit of a funky, there's like fat cap missing from here. Normally they're completely covered, but I still think it'll be fine. We're gonna cut our steaks this way, so they're still gonna have a nice chunk of fat on each of them. If I flip it over, it's pretty clean on the bottom. There is a little bit of stuff here I'm gonna trim off. Just any little bits of silver skin or fat. You don't want to be ending up chewing on them, so you might as well take them off now that you can. These ones are always pretty well cleaned anyway, so. Okay, I think that's about all we need. So, if we look at it from this side, we can see the grain is running this way. Now, the key for tenderness is to cut against the grain. However, we need to remember that we're cutting these into steaks, so the final cut will be going the other way. So we need to cut the steaks with the grain, so the final cut goes against the grain. Does that make sense? It will in a second. So, I don't know how thick to go with these. Just mark the fat cap a little bit to see. So we can get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a little chunk at the end. That's 5 decent sized steaks, probably 1.5 inch thickness. I think that'll be enough. I don't want to go too crazy thick. I'll take one off here first, see what it looks like. That's a nice steak. So I'll use this for demonstration. The grain is running along the length of this piece, so whenever it is cooked, we'll be cutting this way, which will go against the grain, leaving nice short fibres, should help with tenderness. But I think that thickness is probably fine, so I'll follow my marks from before and get the rest of them cut up. So our steaks are cut, they're looking mighty fine. Just know this is going to be good. That fat cap. Interested to see what it goes like compared to whenever it's done as a whole roast. But as with any good picanha, we need to get a bit of salt on there. So this little guy here, he's going to be an awkward one on the grill, but I'm going to put a little drizzle of brighter gold hickory smoked oil on them. And it'll just help them stop sticking to the grates quite so much. Plus it will hold a lot of that salt on there too. So that, and then we're going on with plenty of salt. I will put a little bit of pepper in these as well, but I'm not going to do that until the end, because I have a feeling once that fat starts dripping down, we're going to get flare-ups, and I don't really want burnt pepper on these steaks. All right, flip them over. You get the other side done. Another little drizzle of oil. more salt. I'll nestle them all back up together, just kind of hold each other up, because I do want to make sure there's salt on that fat cap. And just a little drizzle. It's pretty dry fat, so nothing's really going to stick to it. And last bit onto the fat cap. Right, I think that is good. So our steaks are ready. I have the Kamado Joe fired up. I have the coals all banked to one side, and the cooking rate's on the highest level. Maybe traditionally when you're searing a steak, you would put it right down on the lowest level above the coals, but in an effort to try and curtail some of that flare up and flame, I've lifted them off a little bit. Things can get a little bit frantic down at that lower level, so we're sitting higher. There's a good heat in there. The barbecue's sitting at about 230 degrees, so it's definitely hot. So we're going to put these on directly over. We're not doing reverse sear, we're not doing them indirect and then moving them over the coals. We're just going to put them on and keep flipping them every minute or a couple of minutes to try and build up a nice crust on the outside of them. Alright guys, time to tuck in. Hold on, we're not going to stir fry yet. I want to try a bit of the steak on its own. So, that is tender. So we seared them off, 2 minutes each side, just kept flipping, checking them with the thermopen. Whenever they hit a turner temperature of around 60, I lifted them off. Probably need to do a little bit better with my slicing. There was one or two of them were a little bit thicker than the others. The family have had all theirs. They're eating at the minute. I brought mine out to chat with you guys about it. But I am pleasantly surprised how tender that is. Like, it is pull apart tender. And again, this is cutting it with the grain into steaks so that now we have these little short muscle fibers, and that's what's making them so tender. Picanha fat is awesome. All right, give me a mouthful of that with the stir fry. Yeah. That's 1,000,000 times better than old stir fry strips in the pan. So the question is, now we have done it 3 ways. We have done the reverse sear roast method. So we have cooked it at the temp and then seared it off. Well, technically we done it, it wasn't a reverse sear, it was just normal sear. So we seared it and then moved it indirect to roast it. We have done cutting it up and doing it on the rotisserie, which is sort of the traditional way of doing it, and now we've cut it into steaks and seared them off this way. I'm gonna say this kind of has the best of both worlds, because the thing that's missing from, well, the roasting method of it makes it super tender, and whenever it's sliced against the grain, same way, it is pull apart tender. It's so juicy, it's so nice, but it lacks a little bit of that crust on the outside of it. The rotisserie method, on the other hand, builds up that crust so well because the fat is constantly basting around it. So you get a really nice crust on the outside of it. So once you take a slice off, it is super juicy, there's a nice crust on it, but it just doesn't seem as tender as the roasting method. Whereas this, I would say, has the best of both worlds. It's pull apart tender, has a nice crust on the outside of it from the sear. All the flavours there, nice and salty. The fat, I was expecting the fat to be worse than it was for flare-ups, but it works perfectly. Nice little kick of pepper, we put that on at the end before we let them rest. And the pepper isn't acrid from being burnt with those flames coming up. You get the nice little pepper heat saltiness is there, creamy fat. I love it. So, I want to know what you think. If you've tried either of the 3 methods, have you tried all 3 methods? Which ones do you prefer? I'm going to say for a nice quick cook, no fuss, no hassle, this is definitely a great way to eat a picanha. So let me know what you think in the comments. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel and I'll see you guys in the next video.